I am Travis, 28 years old, and until last month I thought I had finally achieved independence by renting an apartment from my parents at fair market value. That illusion shattered when my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. There stood my sister Megan, surrounded by suitcases, announcing, "I will live here now." Little did I know this unexpected visit would force me to stand up to my family in ways I never imagined. Before I tell you how I stood up to my family for the first time in my life, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to deal with entitled family members. My relationship with my parents, Robert and Karen, has always been complicated. They loved me, no doubt, but their love came wrapped in layers of overprotectiveness that nearly suffocated me growing up. Every decision I made was scrutinized, from the friends I chose to the clothes I wore. College applications. They had opinions about every school. My first job interview. They wanted to come with me. It took years of gentle pushing back to carve out even a small space of independence. When I graduated college 6 years ago with my degree in graphic design, I was determined to move out and prove I could stand on my own 2 feet. My parents reluctantly agreed but insisted on helping me find an apartment. After weeks of searching, they made an unexpected proposal. They had recently purchased a rental property as an investment, a small 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, and offered to rent it to me. At first I was hesitant. Would this just be another way for them to keep tabs on me? But the terms they offered seemed reasonable. I would pay fair market rent, we would have a legally binding lease agreement, and they promised to respect my privacy as they would any tenant. The apartment was closer to downtown, where most design agencies were located, and the rent was slightly below what similar units were going for. After careful consideration, I agreed. For the most part, they kept their word. Yes, they would occasionally drop by with home-cooked meals or call a bit too frequently to check if the heating was working properly during winter, but they did respect the formal landlord-tenant relationship we had established. I paid my rent on time, they handled repairs promptly, and our arrangement worked. Over the next few years, I built my career as a graphic designer. Starting at a small agency where I learned the ropes, I eventually moved to a mid-sized marketing firm, where I now lead design projects for several major clients. My income grew steadily, and with it, my sense of stability and pride in what I had accomplished. During this same period, my younger sister Megan took a very different path. 2 years my junior, Megan had always been the free spirit of the family. While I was cautious and methodical, she was impulsive and spontaneous. These qualities made her fun to be around, but less reliable when it came to financial decisions. After dropping out of college in her junior year, Megan bounced between jobs in retail, hospitality, and administrative work, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. She lived paycheck to paycheck, frequently running short before month end and turning to our parents for help. They always came through, explaining away her behavior as finding herself and exploring options. I watched this cycle repeat for years, occasionally voicing my concerns that they were enabling her, only to be told I did not understand her creative spirit. I tried to help Megan in my own way. When she needed money for rent once, I loaned it to her with a clear repayment plan rather than just giving it. She made 2 small payments before forgetting about the rest. When she complained about not finding good jobs, I helped her update her resume and sent her leads from my professional network. She rarely followed up on them. Eventually, I stepped back, realizing that my efforts were not making a difference if she was not ready to change. A month before the incident that would change everything, I heard from our parents that Megan had lost her job at a local coffee shop. Apparently, she had too many unexcused absences after staying out late with friends. 2 weeks later, they mentioned she was having trouble with her landlord over late rent payments. I expressed concern but was assured they were helping her figure things out. I assumed that meant more financial assistance, not what was coming next. My apartment had become my sanctuary over the years. I had carefully furnished it with pieces that reflected my personality and design aesthetic. My gray sectional sofa was where I unwound after long workdays, watching documentaries on my wall-mounted television. The solid oak dining table I had refinished myself served as both eating space and work surface when I brought projects home. My bedroom featured a queen-sized platform bed with built-in storage and a small but perfect desk where I did freelance work on weekends. The walls were adorned with framed prints from local artists I admired, and houseplants thrived on every available surface. It was not luxurious, but it was mine, created through years of careful saving and intentional choices. My Saturday mornings followed a peaceful routine: wake up naturally around 8, brew fresh coffee in my French press, and enjoy it on my small balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. Sometimes I would walk to the farmer's market 3 blocks away. Other times I would catch up on industry reading or personal projects. It was the one day I allowed myself to move slowly without the pressure of deadlines or meetings. This particular Saturday would destroy that routine and ultimately change my relationship with my family forever. The insistent doorbell at 7 a.m. was just the beginning. When I opened the door that Saturday morning, still bleary-eyed and confused from being woken up so early, the sight that greeted me made no sense at first. Megan stood there, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing the confident smile she always used when she was about to ask for something unreasonable. Behind her were 3 large suitcases, 2 duffel bags, and several plastic storage containers stacked precariously on top of each other. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, pushing past me into the apartment before I could even respond. "Mom and Dad said you would not mind if I crashed here for a while. My roommate turned out to be such a psycho." Can you believe she actually expected me to pay rent on time during a personal crisis? Some people have zero empathy. I stood frozen in the doorway, my brain struggling to catch up with what was happening. "Megan, what are you talking about? Nobody discussed this with me." She rolled her eyes while dragging one of her suitcases toward my bedroom. "Oh, I am sure they meant to tell you. Anyway, it is not a big deal. Your place is plenty big enough for both of us." I stepped in front of her, blocking the hallway to my bedroom. "No, it is not. This is a 1-bedroom apartment. Where exactly do you plan to sleep?" "In the bedroom, obviously," she said with a laugh. "You can take the couch. You are always talking about how comfortable it is when Mom and Dad visit." The absurdity of the situation was starting to sink in, along with a familiar feeling of being steamrolled by my family. I am not giving up my bedroom, and more importantly, you cannot just show up and announce you are moving in. I work from home 3 days a week. I need my space. Megan's expression shifted from casual confidence to wounded innocence, another tactic I had seen her deploy countless times. "Wow, I cannot believe you would turn away your own sister when she is going through a tough time. Mom and Dad already approved it. Call them if you do not believe me." And that is exactly what I did. With Megan making herself comfortable on my sofa and scrolling through her phone as if the matter was settled, I stepped onto the balcony and called our parents. "Oh, Travis, good morning," my mother answered cheerfully. "Did Megan arrive safely?" The casual confirmation sent a surge of anger through me that I struggled to contain. "Mom, why would you tell Megan she could stay with me without even asking me first?" "Honey, she is your sister, and she is going through a rough patch. Her landlord was being completely unreasonable about the rent being a few weeks late, and she had nowhere else to go. That does not explain why you did not discuss this with me before telling her she could move in," I insisted. My father's voice joined the call. "Son, it is just temporary until she gets back on her feet. Family helps family. You have that whole apartment to yourself, surely you can share for a little while." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Dad, I have a 1-bedroom apartment. There is no privacy, no extra space. I work from home part of the week. This will not work." "Travis," my mother chimed in with the guilt-inducing tone I knew too well when you were struggling after college, "we helped you out with the apartment. Now, it is your turn to help your sister." "You did not help me out," I corrected her. "I pay market rate rent. We have a legal lease agreement. This is a business arrangement that benefits both of us." "That is just a formality," my father dismissed. "At the end of the day, we are family, and family comes first. Megan needs support right now." I looked through the sliding glass door at my sister, who was now rummaging through my refrigerator. "How long is temporary? Does she have a plan to find a new job? A new apartment?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. "Just give it a week or 2, my mother finally said. "Things will work out, you will see." After ending the call, I stood on the balcony for several minutes, watching the early morning light spread across the neighborhood. I knew from experience that direct confrontation would only entrench my parents further in their position. For the moment, I would need to compromise. When I returned inside, Megan had made herself a sandwich, using the artisanal bread and premium turkey I had bought for my lunches the following week. So she asked through a mouthful, "Everything cool now?" "You can stay for the weekend," I said firmly. "Just until Monday. Then we need to figure out a better solution." Megan rolled her eyes. "Mom and Dad already said I could stay as long as I need to." "They are not the ones living here," I pointed out. "This is my home, and I make the final decision about who stays here." "Whatever," she shrugged. "You will get used to having me around. It will be fun like when we were kids." Those words sent a chill down my spine. When we were kids, fun for Megan had usually meant her using my things without permission and facing no consequences when they got broken or lost. Within hours, my fears were confirmed. Megan had spread her belongings throughout my meticulously organized living room. Her makeup cluttered the bathroom counter I kept spotless. She took a 90-minute shower, using all my hot water. When I tried to work on a freelance project in the afternoon, she played music so loudly I could not concentrate, then acted offended when I asked her to use headphones. By Sunday evening, my apartment no longer felt like mine. Megan had rearranged the throw pillows on my sofa, stuck takeout menus to my refrigerator with touristy magnets, and somehow managed to stain my area rug with nail polish. When I mentioned any of these things, she dismissed my concerns as being too uptight and reminded me that family should not keep score. I went to bed Sunday night, hoping that my parents would come to their senses, or that Megan would recognize the imposition and make alternative arrangements. I could not have been more wrong. Monday morning brought no relief. I woke up early hoping to get some quiet work time before Megan emerged from her late night of binge-watching reality shows on my television. I had just settled at my dining table with my laptop and coffee when my doorbell rang again. When I opened the door, my parents stood there, both wearing expressions I could not quite read. My mother held a folder that immediately triggered my anxiety. "Good morning," I said cautiously. "I was not expecting you." "We thought we should discuss the new arrangement in person," my father replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. My mother followed her eyes, scanning the apartment and noting Megan's possessions strewn about. "Is your sister still asleep?" she asked. I nodded, lowering my voice. "She was up until after 2 a.m. Look, I am glad you are here. We need to talk about how this situation is not sustainable." "That is exactly why we came," my father said, sitting down at my dining table and gesturing for me to join them. "There are some financial matters we need to discuss." My mother opened the folder and pulled out what I recognized as a copy of my lease agreement. "With Megan staying here now, there will naturally be some additional expenses. Utilities will go up, there will be more wear and tear on the apartment, that sort of thing." "I understand that," I said, feeling a small surge of hope that they were being practical about the situation. "If she stays more than a few days, she should contribute to those costs. But honestly, this space is too small for two people, especially when I need to work from home." My parents exchanged a look I had seen many times before, the one that meant they had already made a decision and were just going through the motions of discussion. "Actually," my father said, clearing his throat, "we have decided that the fairest approach would be to adjust your rent to reflect the changed circumstances." "Adjust it how?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. My mother slid a paper across the table. It was an amended lease agreement with a new rent amount that was exactly double what I had been paying. "You want to double my rent?" I stared at them in disbelief. "How is that fair? I did not ask for a roommate. I do not want a roommate." "We need to cover our expenses for Megan," my father explained as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "She is not in a position to pay rent right now, but the costs of supporting her need to come from somewhere." I felt my face growing hot. "So let me get this straight. Megan loses her job because of her own irresponsibility. She gets evicted because she does not pay her rent. And your solution is to force her into my space and make me pay for the privilege." "Do not be so dramatic, Travis," my mother sighed. "Megan is going through a difficult time and needs family support. You have a stable job and can afford to help out." "That is not the point," I insisted. I already pay fair market rent for this apartment. If anything, Megan should be paying rent to me as a subletter, not that I want that arrangement at all." My father leaned forward. "Son, the lease agreement was always just a formality between family. The reality is that we own this apartment and we get to decide the terms." "A legal lease is not a formality," I countered. "It is a binding contract that protects both parties." "Be realistic," my mother interjected. "Would you rather we rented this place to a stranger at the current market rates, because we could get much more than what you are paying now?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "What about Megan taking some responsibility? Has she applied for new jobs? Is she looking for her own place?" My parents shifted uncomfortably. "She needs time to recover from this setback," my mother said defensively. "The job market is very stressful right now." "And the housing market is even worse," my father added. "She cannot possibly afford a decent place on her own right now." "So your solution is to punish me for her choices?" I asked incredulously. "We are not punishing anyone," my mother insisted. "We are asking everyone to contribute what they can to support the family. Right now, this is how you can help." I stood up from the table, my decision made. "If you double my rent, I will move out. I can find my own place where I do not have to subsidize someone else's irresponsibility." To my shock, both my parents actually laughed. "Good luck finding an affordable place in this market," my father scoffed. "Rent prices have skyrocketed in the past year. You will end up paying more for less space anywhere else in this area. And you would need first and last month's rent security deposit application fees," my mother ticked off on her fingers. "That is thousands of dollars up front. Do you even have that kind of money saved?" Their dismissive attitude felt like a slap in the face. They assumed I was still the financially naive college graduate I had been years ago, not a professional who had been carefully saving and building my credit. Before I could respond, Megan emerged from my bedroom, yawning dramatically. "Morning, everyone. Is there any coffee?" "We were just explaining the new arrangement to your brother," my mother said, with forced brightness. Megan nodded as she poured herself coffee in my favorite mug. "About the rent thing? Yeah, it makes sense. After all, the apartment is plenty big enough for both of us." I looked at my family sitting in my living room making decisions about my life, without any consideration for what I wanted or needed. In that moment, something shifted inside me. For years I had tried to maintain family harmony by compromising, by being the reasonable one, but there was no reasoning with this level of entitlement. "I need time to think about this," I said finally. My father stood up clearly, considering the matter settled. "The new rent will start next month. That gives you a few weeks to adjust your budget." As they prepared to leave, my mother added, "Oh, and maybe you could clear some space in your closet for Megan's clothes. She has such a beautiful wardrobe, it would be a shame to keep it all packed away." After they left, I retreated to my balcony again, the only space in my apartment that still felt like mine. Megan had already connected her gaming console to my television and was loudly trash-talking other players online. I had 1 month to figure out my next move. Living with Megan quickly proved even worse than I had anticipated. What was supposed to be a temporary weekend stay had morphed into an indefinite arrangement with my parents' full blessing and my complete frustration. By Wednesday of that first week, I had compiled a mental list of grievances that grew by the hour. Megan treated my refrigerator like a free vending machine, consuming food I had purchased and never replacing anything. Twice I came home from work expecting to have leftovers for dinner, only to find empty containers in the sink. "Oh, was that yours?" she would ask with feigned innocence when confronted. "I thought you were done with it. I will get groceries when I have some money coming in." That money, of course, never materialized because Megan's job search consisted of occasionally scrolling through listings while complaining that nothing was the right fit for her skills. What those skills were remained a mystery, since I had never seen her complete any task that did not directly benefit her immediate desires. The apartment's single bathroom became a constant battleground. Megan's extensive beauty routine meant she occupied it for hours each morning, often making me late for video meetings with clients. When I tried to establish a schedule, she agreed enthusiastically, and then ignored it completely the next day. "Creative people cannot be bound by rigid schedules," she informed me, when I knocked on the door 15 minutes before an important client call, desperately needing to shower and dress. My skincare routine has specific timing requirements. My work suffered the most from this new arrangement. As a graphic designer, I needed quiet concentration for detailed projects. Megan seemed physically incapable of understanding this concept. She would take phone calls on speaker in the living room while I was working, play music without headphones, and constantly interrupt me with trivial questions or observations. Travis, do you think I should go blonde again? Travis, have you seen this funny video, Travis? Which filter looks better for my social media post? Travis, can you help me draft an email to my old boss? It needs to sound professional, but also let her know she was totally unreasonable. When I explained that I was on deadline and needed to focus, she would pout dramatically. I'm just trying to bond with my big brother. Sorry for thinking you might want to actually talk to me. The situation with my workspace reached critical mass during my 3rd week of cohabitation with Hurricane Megan, as I had begun to think of her. I had an important video presentation with a potential new client, a national retail chain that could significantly boost my portfolio and income. I had warned Megan 3 days in advance that I would need the apartment quiet and to myself from 10 a.m. to noon on Thursday. No problem, she had assured me. I will make myself scarce. Thursday morning arrived, and I set up my presentation materials at my dining table, which served as my work-from-home space. I had arranged my background carefully with a bookshelf visible, and a small plant adding a touch of professionalism to the frame. 30 minutes before the call, Megan was still in her pajamas eating cereal on the couch. Megan, you said you would be out during my presentation, I reminded her with growing anxiety. Relax, she said through a mouthful of my premium granola. I will just hang out in the bedroom. You will not even know I am here. Reluctantly, I accepted this compromise, making her promise to stay quiet. The call began well. The client seemed impressed with my portfolio and the initial concepts I had developed for their brand refresh. I was just getting to the core of my presentation when the bedroom door flew open. Megan strolled out in a towel, apparently having decided this was the perfect time to shower. She walked directly behind me, visible to everyone on the call, and gave a little wave to my clients before disappearing into the bathroom. The shower started running loudly in the background of my professional presentation. I tried to continue, mortified but determined to salvage the situation. 10 minutes later, as I was answering questions about implementation timelines, Megan emerged again, this time fully dressed but blow-drying her hair without closing the bathroom door. The noise made conversation impossible. I'm so sorry, I said to the clients, feeling my chance at this project slipping away. Could you give me just one moment? I muted myself, rushed to the bathroom, and closed the door, giving Megan a look that should have turned her to stone. When the call mercifully ended, I knew from the client's polite but distant goodbyes that I had lost the opportunity. The damage to my professional reputation was done. What is wrong with you? I demanded when Megan finally emerged. You knew how important that was to me. She shrugged, completely unconcerned. It is not like I interrupted on purpose. I needed to shower and I tried to be quick about it. Besides, they seemed nice. I bet they will still hire you. That night I received an email thanking me for my time but informing me they had decided to go with another designer. The lost income from that contract would have covered 3 months of my current rent. The final straw came that weekend. I had decided to stay late at the office on Friday to finish a project, grateful for the peace and quiet. When I returned home around 9 p.m., music was blaring from my apartment, audible even from the building's entrance. As I approached my door, I could hear multiple voices and laughter. Inside, I found a full-blown party in progress. At least 15 people were crammed into my small living room. Someone had moved my dining table to make a space for dancing. Drinks balanced precariously on my bookshelves, and the air was thick with cigarette smoke despite my building's strict no-smoking policy. Megan spotted me from across the room and bounded over clearly several drinks into her evening. Travis, you are finally home, everyone. This is my super serious brother whose apartment we are enjoying. A few people raised their glasses in my direction before returning to their conversations. What is going on here? I asked, struggling to keep my voice level. Just a little get-together. Megan slurred slightly. Some friends from my old job were free, and I thought, why not? You did not think to ask me before inviting people into my home. I surveyed the room, noticing a red wine spill on my couch that no one had bothered to clean up. You always say you should socialize more, she countered. I am helping you meet new people. I need everyone out, I said firmly. Now. Do not be such a buzzkill, Megan pouted. It is barely 11. The night is young. I do not care. This is my apartment, and I did not authorize this party. Everyone needs to leave. Megan's expression hardened. Actually, according to Mom and Dad, it is our apartment now. I live here too, and I have the right to have friends over. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I walked to the stereo system and unplugged it, plunging the room into sudden silence. This party is over. Everyone who does not live here needs to leave immediately, or I will call building security. The partygoers, sensing the tension, began to gather their belongings. Megan stood in the center of the room, face flushed with alcohol and anger. You are such a controlling jerk, she hissed as her friends filed out. No wonder you do not have any friends of your own. After the last guest left, I surveyed the damage to my apartment. Beer cans and liquor bottles littered every surface. Someone had broken one of my framed prints. The bathroom was in a state that defied description, and my couch, my beautiful gray sectional that I had saved for months to purchase, now bore an ominous red stain that I suspected would never fully come out. You need to clean this up, I told Megan. She rolled her eyes and flopped onto the stained couch. I will do it tomorrow. I am too tired now. Number, you will do it now. Or what she challenged, the familiar confidence of someone who had never faced consequences returning to her voice. You will tell Mom and Dad, go ahead. They already think you are being selfish about this whole arrangement. In that moment, looking at my sister lounging on my ruined furniture in my violated space, I made my decision. My family had pushed me too far, and it was time to push back. The morning after Megan's disastrous party, I left the apartment early, leaving her sleeping amid the mess she had created. I needed space to think clearly away from the constant reminder of my family's disregard for my boundaries. I found myself at a local coffee shop where Jason, one of my closest friends from college who had gone on to become a real estate attorney, agreed to meet me on short notice. So let me get this straight, Jason said, after I had explained the situation. Your parents doubled your rent to subsidize your unemployed sister, who they forced into your one-bedroom apartment without your consent, and now she is throwing parties that are damaging your property and potentially your professional reputation. That pretty much sums it up. I confirmed the ridiculousness of the situation hitting me anew as I heard it described by someone outside the family dynamic. Jason shook his head. And what exactly does your lease say about subletting or additional occupants? I pulled out my copy of the lease agreement and pushed it across the table. Section 8 specifically prohibits subletting or additional occupants without written consent from both parties. My parents drafted this themselves when I moved in. He reviewed the document carefully. This is actually a pretty solid lease. Ironically, your parents protected themselves with all the standard clauses, which now protect you as well. They cannot legally force you to accept an additional occupant, nor can they double your rent without proper notice as specified in Section 12 here. But they own the apartment, I pointed out. They can choose not to renew my lease when it expires in 3 months. True, Jason agreed. But that still gives you 3 months of legal protection at your current rent rate. More than enough time to find alternative housing if that is what you decide to do. What about my furniture and belongings? I asked. Most of the furnishings in the apartment are mine, purchased with my own money. The appliances and a few basic pieces came with the apartment, but everything else is mine. Jason nodded thoughtfully. As long as you can prove ownership, those items are legally yours to take with you. I would recommend documenting everything with photographs and receipts if you have them. For the next hour, Jason outlined my options and helped me understand my legal standing. By the time we parted ways, I had a clear plan forming in my mind. The following week was devoted to careful preparation. During the day, I performed my job as usual and pretended to accept the new living arrangement. At night, after Megan had gone to sleep or out with friends, I began my methodical preparations. First, I documented the condition of the apartment, taking detailed photos of every room and noting any damage that had occurred since Megan's arrival. I created a comprehensive inventory of my possessions, complete with photographs and, where possible, receipts or credit card statements proving purchase. Next, I researched rental options in the area. Despite my parents' claims about the impossible housing market, I discovered several viable options within my budget. One in particular caught my attention: a modern one-bedroom in a newly renovated building, slightly farther from downtown but offering better amenities than my current place. The rent was only marginally higher than what I currently paid, and significantly less than the doubled amount my parents were demanding. By the end of the week, I had submitted an application, passed the background check, and signed a lease on the new apartment, using some of my carefully saved emergency fund to cover the security deposit and first month's rent. The final piece of my plan required the most precise timing. I waited for a day when I knew my entire family would be occupied. My parents had mentioned attending a day-long charity event, and Megan had been invited to a former co-worker's birthday celebration that would keep her out from midday until late evening. I requested a personal day from work, citing a minor medical procedure that would require recovery time. The morning of my chosen day, I confirmed that my family had left for their respective engagements. Then I put my plan into action. A moving truck I had reserved arrived at 9 a.m., along with 3 professional movers I had hired, and 2 friends who had volunteered to help after hearing my situation. "We need to be efficient," I explained to the team. "I have created a floor plan of where everything is located and what needs to be moved." I handed each of them a detailed inventory list with photographs attached. We started with the largest items: my sectional sofa, with the wine stain now professionally treated, but still visible, my dining table and chairs, my platform bed, and my desk. Each piece had its own story. The sofa represented my first major furniture purchase, bought after receiving a performance bonus at work. The dining table I had found at a flea market and spent weeks refinishing by hand. The desk had been a gift to myself when I landed my current job. As each piece was carefully wrapped and loaded onto the truck, I felt a mixture of sadness and liberation. These possessions represented years of independence and achievement, and now they were helping me claim an even deeper level of autonomy from my family's manipulations. We moved on to smaller items: my television and electronics, kitchenware, books, and personal effects, my collection of design books and art supplies, the handmade ceramic bowls I had purchased from a local artist, the limited edition prints that had hung on my walls, the plants I had nurtured for years. By 3 in the afternoon, the apartment was transformed. All that remained were the basic appliances that had come with the unit: the inexpensive sofa bed in the living room that my parents had provided for guests, and the generic dining set they had initially furnished the kitchen with. The walls were bare of art, the surfaces cleared of my possessions. It looked eerily like it had the day I moved in 6 years earlier, though now with the added wear and tear of habitation. I performed a final walkthrough, making sure I had not overlooked anything important. In the bedroom, I left the standard issue blinds, but took the blackout curtains I had installed. In the bathroom, I left the shower curtain, but packed my good towels and all personal care items. In the kitchen, I left the microwave that had come with the apartment, but took the French press coffee grinder and quality knives I had invested in over the years. The final item I packed was a small potted succulent that had been a housewarming gift from a coworker when I first moved in. It had survived my initial clueless plant parenting and thrived under increasingly knowledgeable care, eventually producing tiny offshoots that I had replanted. In many ways, it represented my own growth over the years in this space. With the moving truck loaded and on its way to my new apartment, I sat down at the now empty dining table and wrote a letter to my family. I explained my decision clearly and unemotionally, outlined the legal basis for my actions, and expressed hope that once the initial anger passed, we might rebuild our relationship on more respectful terms. I placed my copy of the apartment keys on top of the letter, took one last look around the stripped-down space, and closed the door behind me. As I drove to my new apartment to meet the moving truck, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and held firm regardless of the emotional manipulation they had deployed. Whatever came next, I knew I had taken a crucial step toward genuine independence. The first indication of my family's reaction came less than 2 hours after I had settled into my new apartment. My phone exploded with notifications, 12 missed calls from my mother, 8 from my father, and a stream of increasingly furious text messages from Megan. "How could you do this?" Read Megan's first message, followed by, "I came home to nothing," and then "Mom and Dad are freaking out." I had anticipated this reaction and had already decided to maintain minimal contact during the initial emotional fallout. I sent a brief text to my parents, "I have received your messages." I left a letter explaining my decision. "I am safe and will contact you when everyone has had time to process this change." Then I silenced my phone and continued unpacking my possessions in my new space, arranging furniture and hanging artwork in a layout that felt both familiar and refreshingly different. My new apartment had large windows that filled the rooms with natural light, a feature my old place had lacked. The kitchen was smaller but more efficiently designed, and the bathroom had been recently updated with modern fixtures. Most importantly, it was mine alone, a sanctuary where no one could impose their will without my consent. The next morning I woke to find that the digital bombardment had intensified overnight. Megan had posted a series of stories on her social media accounts, painting me as the villain who had abandoned his poor, struggling sister without warning. "My own brother left me with nothing but an empty apartment," she wrote, accompanied by photos of the bare rooms that conveniently omitted the basic furniture I had left behind. My parents had graduated from calls and texts to emails, their messages swinging between guilt-inducing pleas. "How could you do this to your sister? She is devastated and has nowhere to sleep," and thinly veiled threats. "Your lease clearly states that removing fixtures without permission forfeits your security deposit." I responded with a single factual email. All items removed were my personal property purchased with my own funds. The apartment retains all fixtures and furnishings that were present when I signed the lease. I have extensive documentation and photographs to verify this, as well as witnesses to the moving process. I am willing to discuss this matter further once everyone is ready to have a calm, respectful conversation. The professional tone seemed to give them pause, at least temporarily, but the respite was short-lived. That afternoon, as I was setting up my home office in the second bedroom of my new apartment, a luxury my previous place had not afforded, I received a call from a coworker. Travis, your parents are here at the office asking for you. They seem pretty upset. Security is talking to them, but I thought you should know." I thanked her for the warning and immediately called my supervisor to explain the situation. He was understanding and assured me that security would handle it appropriately. Later, he informed me that my parents had eventually left after being told firmly that disrupting a workplace was unacceptable and that all communication would need to go through proper channels. For the next week, I maintained my distance, responding to messages only with brief factual statements and refusing to engage with emotional manipulations. I focused on settling into my new home and catching up on work projects that had suffered during the chaos of the past month. Megan's social media campaign continued, though, with diminishing engagement as her friends tired of the drama. My parents alternated between angry demands and mournful lamentations about family loyalty. I weathered it all with a calm resolve that surprised even me. Eventually, as I had hoped, the emotional intensity began to ebb. 10 days after my move, I received an email from my father with a markedly different tone. "Your mother and I would like to meet to discuss recent events. We suggest Saturday at 11 a.m. at the cafe near your old apartment. Please let us know if this works for your schedule." I agreed to the meeting but suggested a different location, a neutral coffee shop equidistant between our homes. I also requested that Megan attend as the issues involved all of us. They reluctantly agreed. Saturday arrived and I entered the coffee shop with mixed emotions, anxiety about the confrontation ahead, but also pride in standing my ground. My family was already seated at a corner table, their expressions a blend of anger, confusion, and in my mother's case, a hint of hurt that made my resolve waver momentarily. "Thank you for meeting with me." I began, taking the empty chair across from them. "I know the past couple of weeks have been difficult for everyone." My father cut straight to the point. "We want our furniture back. You had no right to take it." "Actually, I had every right," I replied calmly. Everything I removed was purchased with my own money after I moved in. I have receipts, credit card statements, and photographs documenting all of it. That apartment was fully furnished when you moved in, my mother insisted, though with less certainty. It had basic furnishings, I corrected her. A sofa bed, a small dining set appliances, and a bed frame with mattress. All of those items remained when I left. But you knew Megan needed those things, my mother exclaimed. How is she supposed to live there now? The same way I did when I first moved in, I pointed out. With the basic furnishings provided supplemented with items she purchases herself. Megan, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. You could have at least left me the television, and that fancy coffee maker, and some dishes. I have nothing. I left the dishes that came with the apartment, I said, and the microwave. The television and coffee maker were mine, purchased with my money. This is ridiculous, my father fumed. Family does not nickel and dime each other like this. I took a deep breath. I agree that families should not nickel and dime each other, which is why I was surprised when you doubled my rent to subsidize Megan's living expenses, rather than encouraging her to find employment and contribute herself. We were trying to help her through a difficult time, my mother defended. By making it my financial responsibility, without even discussing it with me first. My father leaned forward. Look, maybe we should have handled it differently, but what you did was completely disproportionate. You left your sister with nothing. I left her with exactly what the apartment contained when I moved in, I repeated. And I left after my boundaries were repeatedly violated, my professional reputation was damaged, and my property was disrespected. My mother's expression softened slightly. We never meant for things to go that far. We just thought you two could help each other out. I was never asked if I wanted that arrangement, I pointed out. I was told it was happening, and when I objected, my concerns were dismissed. So you decided to punish everyone by sneaking out like a thief in the night, my father countered. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. Actually, I have something you should hear. I pressed play on a recording I had made during their visit to announce the rent increase. My father's voice emerged clearly from the speaker. Son, the lease agreement was always just a formality between family. The reality is that we own this apartment, and we get to decide the terms. Then my mother's voice. Be realistic. Would you rather we rented this place to a stranger at the current market rates? Because we could get much more than what you are paying now. My own voice. If you double my rent, I will move out. And finally, my father's dismissive laugh. Good luck finding an affordable place in this market. I stopped the recording and looked at their shocked faces. I consulted with an attorney friend. The lease we signed is legally binding. You cannot double my rent without proper notice as specified in the agreement, and you cannot force me to accept an additional occupant. I was within my rights to remove my personal property and terminate the arrangement. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. My father cleared his throat. You recorded us without our knowledge. I live in a one-party consent state, I replied. It was completely legal. I did it to protect myself, since it was clear you were not taking my concerns seriously. A long silence fell over the table. For perhaps the first time I saw uncertainty in my parents' expressions. They had always operated on the assumption that family bonds would trump all other considerations, that emotional appeals would overcome any resistance to their plans. My methodical, legally sound response had caught them completely off guard. Megan broke the silence with an unexpected question. How did you afford a new place, with all the deposits and everything? I have been saving consistently for years, I explained. Building an emergency fund, maintaining good credit, being financially responsible. Something shifted in her expression, a fleeting mix of surprise and perhaps a touch of respect. Oh, I know we have all said and done hurtful things in the past few weeks, I continued, softening my tone. But I hope we can find a way forward that respects everyone's boundaries and needs. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We never meant to hurt you, Travis. We were just trying to take care of both our children. I know, I acknowledged. But I am an adult now. I need to be consulted about decisions that affect my life, not just informed after the fact. My father sat back in his chair, his anger seemingly deflated. So where does this leave us? That depends on all of us, I said. I am willing to work on rebuilding our relationship, but some things need to change. We need to communicate better, respect each other's boundaries, treat each other as adults. The conversation that followed was not easy. Old patterns do not dissolve in a single discussion, but for perhaps the first time my family was listening to me, really listening without immediately dismissing my perspective. It was a small step, but a significant one. As we prepared to leave, Megan surprised me again. Your new place. Is it nice? It is, I told her. Different, but nice in its own way. She nodded thoughtfully. Maybe I should start looking for a job again. A real one, I mean. It was not an apology, not exactly. But coming from Megan, it felt like the beginning of something new. 6 months after my abrupt departure from the family apartment, I sat on the balcony of my new home watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The potted succulent that had accompanied me from my old place had thrived in its new environment, sprouting new growth that seemed to mirror my own personal development. The transition had not been easy. For the first month after our coffee shop, confrontation, communication with my family had been minimal and strained. My parents, still processing their shock at my decisive action, maintained a cool distance. Megan, surprisingly, was the first to reach out in a meaningful way. I got a job, her text message read, 3 weeks after our meeting. Assistant manager at a boutique downtown. The pay is not amazing, but it is a start. I congratulated her sincerely, and we began a cautious exchange of messages that gradually increased in frequency and warmth. She asked for advice on building a budget, something I had never expected from my impulsive sister. I shared the financial management templates I had developed for myself over the years, carefully adjusted to her income level and goals. My parents took longer to come around. The turning point came when my father called me one evening, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Your mother and I have been talking," he began, "about what happened, about how we handled things with you and Megan." I waited, giving him space to continue at his own pace. "We may have. Well, we treated you differently, expected more from you because you seemed more capable. It was not fair, and we see that now." It was not exactly an apology, but from my proud father, it was a significant acknowledgement. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means a lot to hear you recognize it." The conversation that followed was one of the most honest we had ever shared. My father admitted that they had enabled Megan's irresponsibility out of a fear that she would fail without their intervention. In doing so, they had burdened me with unfair expectations while simultaneously undermining my independence. "We thought we were helping both of you in different ways," he explained. "But we can see now that we were not helping either of you become truly independent adults." Over the following months, our family dynamic began a slow but meaningful transformation. My mother invited me to dinner at their home, making a point to ask in advance rather than assuming my availability. My father consulted me about some investment decisions, treating my opinions with newfound respect. Small steps, but significant ones. Megan, to everyone's surprise, thrived with her new responsibilities. The boutique job suited her social nature and eye for style, and the structured environment provided the accountability she had previously lacked. She moved into the family apartment, officially now paying rent directly to our parents at a reasonable rate that increased gradually as her income stabilized. "I actually cleaned the place this weekend," she told me during one of our now regular phone calls. "Like, really cleaned it. I even bought plants. Is this what being an adult feels like?" I laughed. Part of it anyway, the boring but satisfying part. 4 months after my move, I invited my family to dinner at my new apartment. It was the first time they would see where I lived, and I felt a mixture of pride and nervousness as I prepared for their visit. I had arranged my furniture thoughtfully in the space, creating an environment that reflected my personality while remaining welcoming to guests. When they arrived, I watched their expressions as they took in the space I had created for myself. My mother noted the well-equipped kitchen, my father commented on the practical layout of my home office, and Megan immediately gravitated to the artwork on my walls. "This place suits you," she said simply, and I felt a warmth of recognition that had often been missing in our relationship. The dinner was not perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced in conversations, but we were all making conscious efforts to communicate differently. When my mother began to offer unsolicited advice about my career path, she caught herself mid-sentence and rephrased it as a question instead. When my father started to lecture Megan about her spending habits, he paused and acknowledged that she was making her own decisions now. As they prepared to leave that evening, my mother embraced me tightly. "I am proud of you," she whispered. "Not just for your success, but for standing up for yourself, even when it was hard for us to hear." Now, 6 months into my new independence, I reflected on the profound shifts that had occurred not just in my living situation, but in my relationships. The stand I had taken, though difficult and at times painful, had ultimately created space for growth on all sides. My relationship with my family had evolved from one of expected compliance to mutual respect. My parents, though still occasionally slipping into old habits, had begun to see both their children as adults with distinct needs and boundaries. Megan had discovered capabilities within herself that might have remained dormant had we all continued in our established patterns. As for me, I had learned that setting firm boundaries was not selfish, but necessary for healthy relationships. That family love could withstand conflict and even emerge stronger from it. That independence was not just about physical space or financial self-sufficiency, but about the courage to define and defend your own needs, even against those you care about most. The apartment around me was more than just a collection of rooms and possessions. It was tangible proof that I had claimed my autonomy and built a life on my own terms. Each piece of furniture, each carefully chosen decoration, represented a choice made freely, without obligation or resentment. My phone chimed with a message from Megan. "Guess what got promoted to full manager today, celebrating this weekend? You in?" I smiled as I typed my reply. "Absolutely, proud of you." Some might say I acted drastically by moving out the way I did, but sometimes a dramatic gesture is necessary to break entrenched patterns. By refusing to accept the unfair arrangement my family had tried to impose, I had not only secured my own independence, but had inadvertently created an opportunity for all of us to grow. The journey had not been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. Family dynamics built over decades do not transform overnight, but we had taken important steps toward a healthier relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation and expectation. As the last light of day faded from the sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. The furniture around me, the walls that held my chosen possessions, the space that was unquestionably mine, all served as reminders of a simple but powerful truth. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the greatest gift you can give to everyone involved. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? How did you handle it? And did it change your relationship in the long run? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to draw a clear line when necessary.